What is going on, guys? It's Suk and I am back with a brand new video on Super Duper Tech. And in today's video I'll be bringing you my full in-depth review of the 2016 13-inch MacBook Pro with Touchbar. Now, in case you guys have not seen my review of the 15-inch MacBook Pro, then you can click the card in the top right hand corner. And if you are new around here, then why not consider subscribing? But without any further ado, let's hit the titles. So the first thing that I do want to mention is that this is a complete redesign over the previous generation MacBook Pros. And of course, in the eyes of Apple, this would not be a redesign if they did not make the new MacBook thinner and lighter. But perhaps one of the most notable as well as controversial changes that Apple have made to the new MacBook Pro is when it comes to connecting up this MacBook Pro to either your hard drives to charge it or to hook up an external monitor. And in doing so, Apple have moved away from their traditional MagSafe technology, which they have used in the past to charge up their MacBooks. So if you do want that type of functionality back to your MacBook Pro, then you will need to go out and buy a separate cable. More so, if you do use an SD card to transfer files to your MacBook, then yet again you will need to buy an external dongle to hook up your SD card to the new MacBook Pro. Furthermore, I have seen approximately a 25% increase in power and performance when comparing it to the previous generation MacBook Pro. I've also run a number of different benchmarking tests on both the 15 and the 13-inch model, so if you are curious in comparing both of these models together, then you can click the card in the top right hand corner or check the links down below in the description. I've also gotten very sick and tired of hearing people say that you cannot game using a Mac, so I've compiled a separate video showcasing that you can in fact game on a Mac. Now, of course, there is a little caveat to this with the fact that you will have to slightly decrease the graphics quality as well as perhaps the resolution. But let's face it, if you are going to game using a computer or a laptop, then you're going to go out there and buy yourself a custom Alienware laptop or perhaps a custom computer altogether. And once again, I will leave links down below in the description, or you can click the card in the top right hand corner right now. Another part of the 13-inch MacBook Pro that has seen a slight little upgrade is in the display. Now, admittedly, the size of the screen as well as the overall resolution of it has stayed the same, being 13.3 inches and 2560 by 1600. So the main area in which the display has seen its improvements is in the overall brightness. Now, Apple do say that this screen is rated at 500 nits, and in my test I did find that the display itself was around 2 times as bright as the previous generation, which does mean that if you are using your MacBook in direct sunlight, that you will be able to see the screen a lot more clearly. And also, Apple have made the 13-inch MacBook Pro display DCI P3 compliant, which does mean that there are now a more wider variety of colors that the display can produce. Another area of the new MacBook Pros that has seen a drastic improvement is in the audio quality of the stereo speakers. And here is just a quick little sample of what it's like to listen to audio from both the 2016 and 2015 MacBook Pro.
Isn't the best place to find the lovers, of the bar is where I go. Me and my friends at the table doing shots, tripping fast, and then we talk slow.
Another design change that Apple have made is that the light up Apple logo on the back of the display is no longer there. Instead, we have a polished Apple logo, much like we see with the 12-inch Retina MacBook. The next important change that Apple have made to the new MacBook Pro is that the keyboard on it is very much like that found on the 12-inch Retina MacBook. So what this actually means is that each individual key has a separate LED underneath it, lighting them individually. Now, though many people do prefer the backlight system found on the previous generation MacBook Pro, I for some reason really enjoy the new one, and this is strictly down to it giving the keyboard a more clean and uniform look. Another characteristic of the keyboard that the MacBook Pro has stolen from its 12-inch Retina MacBook brother is the butterfly mechanism, which is held underneath each individual key. Now, what this does mean is that when you do type away on the new MacBook Pro keyboard, each key will feel a lot more stable, though the travel distance on each individual stroke will be less than what's found on the previous generation. And also, if you take a closer look below the keyboard, you will notice that the trackpad has gotten considerably larger at least when compared to the previous generation. Now, unlike the 15-inch model, with the 13-inch model I did not run into any issues, especially when typing away where my palm would accidentally hit the touchpad. One of the major selling points for the new MacBook Pros is the touch bar on top of the keyboard. Now, this touch bar does replace the existing function keys, and as this is essentially an OLED multi-touch touchscreen, it can be used in a variety of different ways to interact and change aspects of the operating system and applications that use it. Now, you still have the ability to do the typical changing your brightness, increasing the volume or muting it, and all the existing things that the function keys were able to do. But the main selling point for this is that it is contextual, which does mean that it will change depending on the different program or application that you are using. So as you saw in the previous clip, I was using YouTube and I was able to use a touch bar to play and pause, as well as minimize and maximize and scrub through the timeline of the video itself. But when using an application like Final Cut Pro that is tailor-made to take advantage of the touch bar does come into its own. Now, what I do mean by this is that you are able to interact and change different aspects in the timeline, such as increasing and decreasing the volume levels. And of course, as you are seeing, you are able to scrub through the entire timeline with one single swoop. Now, admittedly, at first, when you do get the MacBook Pro with touch bar, you're not really going to be using the touch bar a lot, especially if you know the keyboard shortcuts. But when you do train your mind to thinking into actually using the touch bar, it can become a very viable tool. I do also enjoy the fact that Apple have included a dedicated button to summon Siri. Now, admittedly, it is the same Siri that we have had with the introduction of macOS Sierra and iOS 10, but with Siri just a fingertip away, I do find that I have been frequently using it a lot more. As I said earlier, the touch bar is of course a screen, and with it being a screen, it can display anything that the user chooses. So if you in particular do not like using Siri or don't really change the brightness and have it set to an auto brightness, then you are able to change these aspects of the touch bar. And just to the right of the touch bar, embedded in the power button, is Touch ID. First introduced by the iPhone 5S and then brought over to the iPad models such as the iPad Air 2, the Touch ID sensor has finally made its way over to the MacBook lineup. And just in case you guys are a little curious, on each individual user account, you are able to have up to 3 individual fingers programmed. You may think that for you to use Touch ID and unlock this MacBook that you would need to have the screen turned on, but that's not the case. As long as the MacBook is in either standby or sleep mode, pressing on the Touch ID power button will unlock the MacBook. Now, here is just a little clip of when I was conducting the gaming test. I did find that the actual touch bar itself stopped being responsive. Now, I do want to let you guys know that when I was using the 15-inch MacBook Pro, I didn't run into any of these types of issues. So if you are doing quite intensive tasks on your MacBook Pro, then it might be a good idea to skip up to the 15-inch models. Because let's face it, you don't want to be gaming or watching a movie at night and then the volume creep up for you not to be able to turn the volume down. And I did find that if you close the application or program that you was running, that the touch bar would resume back to its normal functionality. And once again, another area of the MacBook Pro which hasn't seen an update in quite some time is to the FaceTime HD camera, which, if I'm being honest, shouldn't be called HD as it's still stuck at 720p. So what are my final thoughts and views on the new MacBook Pros? Now, the first thing that I do want to talk about is of course the fact that Apple have gone full on board with USB Type-C, and as the majority of new products that will be coming out soon will likely have a USB Type-C connector instead of the typical Type-A, this further future-proofs the new MacBook Pro for at least the next up and coming 5 years. Now, of course, for the time being, you will have to go out and buy yourself some dongles and adapters to use your existing products, or you can go out there and buy yourself USB Type-C cables, which of course will allow you to plug them directly into your MacBook Pro. As for the quality of the display, I do thoroughly enjoy the fact that it is DCI-P3 compliant. As for the better part of a year, I have been using the 5K iMac, which is also DCI-P3 compliant, which gives the display an increased amount of colors that it can reproduce. One of the next major selling points of the new MacBook Pros is the touch bar. I will admit that when Apple did release the new MacBook Pros, I did believe that the actual touch bar itself would become a gimmick and not many people would use it. And when I first did receive the MacBook Pro, for at least the first week I didn't really see myself using it that often. But as time has slowly passed, I've learned to simply adapt and use the touch bar in my workflow. Now I can see where Apple do want to take the touch bar, but at the end of the day, it is down to the third-party application developers to utilize this feature. So who would I recommend these MacBook Pros for? Well, if you are first up in the market for a new MacBook, then of course you will have seen the new MacBook Pros. Though I would advise personally waiting out to see the next generation models, as the 2017 MacBook Pros are rumoured to come with more powerful and power efficient processors. Not to mention that it is also rumoured to come with a 32GB RAM option. Now there were many people that did claim to have issues with the new generation MacBook Pros. Now though I didn't run into too many issues with the 15-inch model, with the 13-inch model I was only getting around 4.5 hours of usage. And with the aforementioned efficient processors, the next generation 2017 MacBook Pro is surely going to have severe improvements to the battery life. So to put it short and sweet, if you do want a new MacBook Pro, go ahead and just find yourself a refurbished model for a fraction of the price. Or if you are like me and you want the latest and the greatest piece of new technology, then I'm sure you've already made your mind up. So guys, that has been it for today's video. I do hope you did enjoy it. If you did enjoy it, then make sure you smack that like button. And if you are new around here, then why not subscribe? And if you have got any questions or queries, then go ahead and leave them down below in the comment section, or go ahead and message me on my social media. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a good one.